We truly believe that innocent, pure children are always under God's protection, don't we? That their purity alone will shield them from the dangers lurking in this world. But today, the letter from this woman will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about this. She encountered an unimaginable event that caused her soul to be dragged into a haunting realm, where God revealed 7 shocking reasons why children will end up in hell. This is a wake-up call about the responsibility we bear in raising and protecting the future generation. If you are a parent, grandparent, or anyone who cares for children, you cannot afford to miss a single moment of this powerful near-death experience. Follow it all the way to the end. God cannot stand to watch the decline and fall of today's younger generation anymore. Don't let this story pass without reflecting and taking action. Before we begin, please like, subscribe to the channel, because every action you take is a call for faith. And leave a comment with your name and the city you live in so God knows you and the prayers in your heart. Now, let's listen to her testimony. My name is Eliza. I was born into a devout Christian family, the daughter of a rural pastor. My childhood was shaped by Sunday worship, Bible readings echoing through our small home, and whispered nighttime prayers with my parents. Faith wasn't just taught, it was woven into my very identity. I was raised to fear God, to honor Scripture, and to walk in obedience. And when I became a mother myself, I carried those same values forward. I believed that my strong faith would be enough to guide my child. That if I remained faithful, my daughter would naturally walk in the same light I had. Her name is Naomi. She's 13 now, an age both beautiful and turbulent. For years I tried to bring her up in God's ways. We prayed together. I read her Bible stories. I believed I was doing everything right. But lately, everything has changed. Naomi barely speaks to me about faith anymore. She doesn't pray, doesn't open the Bible. Instead, she spends most of her time staring into her phone, lost in a digital world I can't enter. I try to talk to her, to remind her of God, but all I get are cold stares. Sometimes it's as if the faith I hold dear is just a joke to her. Many nights I've wrestled with tears and questions. Aren't children innocent? How could God allow a child to go to hell? I held on to the belief that kids, in their youth and ignorance, would be spared, that God's mercy would always cover them. But what I saw, what I experienced, destroyed that belief. It was something no mother should ever have to see. And from that moment, I realized, children can be lost, not because they choose darkness, but because we let them drift there, one day at a time. That morning felt like any other. I woke up early, made coffee, fixed breakfast for Naomi, and quietly cleaned up the house. The sky was gray, and something heavy lingered in the air, though I couldn't explain it. I called Naomi, but she didn't answer. Lately, silence had become her response. I sighed, dried my hands, and walked upstairs to her room like I did every day. Just before reaching the doorknob, my foot caught on something, and in an instant, I was falling backward. I hit the floor hard, pain shot through my spine and neck, but I couldn't move. My body went numb, my mouth wouldn't open, and a crushing pressure pinned my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't call out. The world spun around me, and then everything faded. Suddenly, I saw myself lying on the floor, lifeless, frozen mid-breath. I hovered above the scene, stunned. Then, without warning, I was pulled downward by an invisible force. It wasn't falling, it was being dragged. I was surrounded by total darkness, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't pray. I couldn't speak. My soul trembled in terror. Then I heard it. A low, wet laugh, echoing like something rotting underground. A presence approached. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. Ancient, hateful, alive in the shadows. And then it stepped forward. A hunched, burned-looking creature with glowing red eyes and breath like scorched flesh. It stared directly at me, and after a long silence, it growled with a voice straight from hell, "Finally, it's your turn." I stood frozen, unable to move. The grotesque creature stared straight through me with glowing red eyes, eyes that held no life, only hatred. Each step it took pressed heavier into the dark ground, as if it wanted to stretch my fear inch by inch. A cold tremor ran down the invisible spine of my soul, and a quiet whimper escaped my throat, even though I no longer had a body. I couldn't tell if I was crying or going insane. The fear I felt wasn't human anymore. It was something ancient, primal. An instinct inside me screamed, "Run." I buried my face in the void, not knowing which way was up or down, and stammered in desperation, "Please, don't keep me here. I have a daughter. She needs me." My mind was blank. No sermons, no logic, just one image. Naomi, peacefully asleep, completely unaware that her mother was trapped in the darkest place in the universe. "I'll take any punishment. I don't need to go to heaven. I'll stay here. Just let me go back until she grows up and has her own family. Then you can take me. I promise." I was grasping at the last thread of hope, praying this being had even a shred of mercy. It stayed silent for a few seconds, then let out a dry, crackling laugh that sounded like ash blowing across tombstones. It leaned in close, voice like gravel grinding against bone. "Good. That pleases me." For a moment, I thought it was showing mercy. But then its eyes narrowed, its sharp teeth bared, and foul slime dripped from its mouth. "You think your sacrifice, born from love, will move your daughter to change?" Its voice dragged out like a curse. "Wrong. Because you thought you loved her, without ever facing the truth. Your daughter already belongs to me, more and more each day." I trembled. My soul felt crushed against some wall of invisible ice. I couldn't speak anymore. I didn't even know if I still had eyes, but I felt them wide open and my heart teetering on collapse. The creature came even closer, its breath foul like burned meat, and whispered, "You gave her to me. Hour by hour, minute by minute, without even realizing it. Now, I'll let you see everything." It reached one of its long, twisted arms behind its back, more like a tangle of warped joints than a limb, and slashed it through the air. The world around me began to crack and twist. Everything turned grey and shattered like glass, breaking apart layer by layer, revealing deeper realms of hell beneath. I was pulled along, not by force, but by terror itself, the kind of fear so deep it stripped my soul of any resistance. And then the scene completely changed. We entered a completely different space. A pale grey room with no doors, no walls, yet it felt like a prison. The only light came from countless phone screens suspended in mid-air, casting a dim, cold glow devoid of life. In the center of the room, a child sat, curled up, clutching a phone as if it were an oxygen tank. Their face was pale, their eyes wide and expressionless. The screen's glow reflected in their pupils, turning them a strange shade of grey. Empty, soulless. I looked at the child, and my heart clenched. That face looked disturbingly like Naomi. I couldn't help it. I took a step forward, instinctively about to call her name, but the demon's long, bony arms swung out to block me, and he spoke softly, without even looking. "Not your daughter, but a reflection." I froze in place. The child didn't blink, didn't move, just kept swiping up on the screen like they were under a spell. From the device came warped music, garbled voices, and rapidly shifting images, colorful, chaotic, and relentless. but all of it had one thing in common: numbing the mind. The demon tilted his head, his voice calm but terrifying. Children are born with imagination, with soft hearts, but if you place a device in their hands long enough, you'll see they stop needing anyone. He pointed to the child, his eyes flaring red like a stoked furnace. It's being devoured. And you used to call that being well-behaved. I wanted to protest. I wanted to scream, "She's just playing, she's just a kid." But I couldn't speak, because deep down, I had once sighed in relief when Naomi sat quietly, glued to her screen. No noise, no resistance. I thought that was peace, but now I understood. It was the most silent form of possession from hell. He moved closer to another child, no need to touch, just whispered in their ear. The child smirked, a twisted grin like a broken mask, and their eyes went dark. The same happened to others. Hundreds, then thousands of children materialized in that space, each sitting alone, eyes locked on artificial light, as if their souls had already been drained from their bodies. The demon turned back to me. Not angry, not triumphant, just a chilling certainty. This is the first level, the trap of artificial light. And most of you have led your children to this altar with your own hands. The next space was no longer dark or foggy. It looked like a glowing, endless hallway. The walls shimmered with artificial light, and every surface was a screen, displaying flawless faces, sculpted bodies, and curated lives filled with beauty and luxury. In the center stood a girl, 12, maybe 13. She clutched her phone tightly, scrolling endlessly. This time, her eyes weren't blank. They were full of something worse, quiet self-doubt. She stared at each image, then looked down at herself. I watched her expression change, from curiosity to sadness to something darker, shame. Her shoulders sank and her posture curled inward, as if the weight of comparison was too heavy to bear. My heart broke. I had seen that same look before, on Naomi's face. After hours on TikTok, she would glance at herself in the mirror and whisper, "Mom, am I ugly?" I used to laugh softly and brush it off, thinking it's just a phase, but now I realized it wasn't a phase. It was a quiet soul fracture I had ignored. The demon spoke, standing beside me. His voice was smooth, almost thoughtful. She used to be innocent, but with every perfect photo, her sense of worth shattered, little by little. I tried to defend her, to defend us, but I didn't need to, because deep down I already knew the truth. I had once believed social media was harmless, fun, normal, but now I saw it for what it really was, a cursed mirror, distorting truth and draining young hearts. They measure themselves by likes, the demon continued, his words like cold knives. They wonder, am I pretty enough? Do I matter? Why not me? Until eventually they stop asking. They just hate who they are. He pointed to the wall. The screen shifted. A girl posted a selfie, then stared at it, waiting. A few likes, no comments, then a whisper formed in text. "No one cares about me." Her eyes turned black. She turned off her phone, but the voices continued inside her head. "You're invisible. You're not enough." I broke down. I wanted to scream, to hold her, to take the phone away, but I couldn't touch her. I was only a soul, watching the damage I once ignored. Naomi had cried out to me, and I hadn't seen the war inside her. The demon leaned in closer, whispering, "They don't need knives to bleed, just a screen, just enough strangers to convince them they have no value." Then he looked directly at me, not mocking but delivering a truth I couldn't unhear. Social media doesn't kill the body, it kills the soul. And when a child begins to hate herself, she forgets she's loved by God. I collapsed inside. My strength felt stripped away. If this was only the second trap, how much more could I bear? The next space took my breath away the moment I stepped into it. It no longer carried the gloom of the previous levels, but the very familiarity of this place made everything even more terrifying. A regular living room, sofa, TV, dining table, study corner, looked just like any ordinary household. But what made my skin crawl was not the setting, but the coldness quietly woven into the air. In one corner of the room, a little girl sat playing alone. In her hand was a doll with a broken arm, and her mouth murmured meaningless lines. Her mother sat at the table, eyes glued to her phone, scrolling non-stop without once lifting her head. Her father lay stretched out on the sofa, eyes fixed on the television, chewing snacks and chuckling at whatever was on screen. The whole family was in one room, yet no one was truly present. I looked at the girl. Her eyes kept glancing toward her parents, waiting for a look, a question, a hug, but nothing came. She returned to her broken doll, and I felt a lump in my throat. The demon stood beside me, silent at first. He simply looked at me with eyes that knew exactly what I was thinking. Then he spoke, soft as a breeze, but each word stabbed directly into my chest. "You think neglecting a child in silence is harmless? You're wrong. That's how I get in." I turned toward him, trembling. He went on, "Where do they learn love? From this very home. When parents are absent, when love goes unspoken, they start to believe they're not worth loving." I screamed inside, "But parents get tired too. Everyone gets distracted sometimes. Why is it their fault?" The demon turned, his voice now raspy. "No one blames them for being busy, but I don't need much time. I only need a moment of silence, one dinner without a caring word, one missed hug, one time a child cries and no one turns around. Just one of those, and I'm in." I looked back at the girl, small body, but her eyes had already aged, a soul slowly learning to retreat, not in rebellion, but in surrender. I used to think Naomi was strong, because she was quiet, independent, didn't need anyone. But now I know, maybe she had once sat just like this girl, waiting for me to look up from my work, and I hadn't. The demon leaned in close to my ear, whispering what felt like a final verdict. "When love isn't shown, children never learn the presence of God, and when they feel unloved in their own home, I don't need to tempt them. They walk straight toward me on their own." I collapsed. The pain of a soul has no form, but right then I felt it tearing me apart from the inside. I didn't even know what to pray for anymore, because I began to realize I was the one who had opened the door. I thought that after the first 3 levels I would have gotten used to the fear, but no. The next level made me shudder, precisely because it was so ordinary. It was a modern classroom, bright and clean. Students sat in rows, taking notes and paying attention, but their faces were blank. They weren't questioning anything, they were just absorbing. The lesson was about the Big Bang and evolution. It all sounded polished and scientific, but not once was God mentioned. There was no prayer, no scripture, no sign of faith. God wasn't attacked, he was simply ignored, and that silence felt more dangerous than open rejection. The demon stood beside me, calm and cold. "I don't need to ban God," he whispered. "I just need them to believe he has nothing to do with this." And that's when I understood. Naomi had been in classrooms just like this. I had once been proud that she was good at science and math. I told myself she didn't need religion to be a good person. I didn't want her to feel different, so I stayed quiet. But now I realized children don't lose God because they rebel. They lose him because no one reminds them he's there. I looked at a boy taking notes. The teacher asked, "Where does life begin?" He answered, "From molecules." No one mentioned that life began with God's breath. Everything was reduced to logic and randomness, and faith slowly disappeared without a fight. I remembered Naomi once asked, "Why doesn't anyone talk about God at school?" I laughed it off. I didn't want her to feel awkward. But now I saw what that silence had cost. I had missed my chance to plant truth. The demon looked at me, eyes sharp. When a child thinks the world makes sense without God, they stop looking for him. Then he pointed to a girl working silently. I stared and saw Naomi. Not really her, but what she could become. Not hateful, not lost, just unaware of God. And to hell, that's the easiest kind of victory. The next place looked just like my own living room, nothing dark or frightening. A TV on the wall, grey sofa, curtains half drawn, soft lighting. Nothing seemed threatening. But the air carried an invisible weight, and something deep inside me said, "Something is terribly wrong here." A row of children sat silently in front of the screen. They didn't blink, didn't speak. Their eyes were glued to a high-energy entertainment show filled with flashing lights, rapid cuts, and loud pulsing music. The characters acted wildly, dressed provocatively, and made vulgar jokes disguised as humor. It wasn't overtly evil, but everything about it numbed the line between right and wrong. I looked closer. A boy gripped a soda can tightly, his eyes glassy. A girl mouthed song lyrics, lyrics that spoke of betrayal, indulgence, and living only for pleasure. No one seemed aware of what they were absorbing. No one noticed me. They weren't just watching. They were being programmed. Then the demon behind me spoke, not in a whisper but with chilling clarity. "I don't need to trap them in hell, I just need to stream it to them every day." My breath caught. I saw it now. What once passed as harmless was shaping their values. Violence became power, lust became freedom, disrespect became entertainment, and reverence for God erased completely. I thought back to when Naomi was younger. I let her watch whatever kept her quiet. Cartoons, YouTube videos, catchy songs. I thought, it's just a show, it's harmless. But it wasn't. I hadn't handed her to evil, but I had let darkness speak to her daily, through a screen I controlled. The demon didn't gloat. He didn't have to. I understood. Media doesn't destroy children with obvious weapons. It uses the things parents approve of. Family shows, popular music, funny clips. Each one slowly chips away at purity, dulls the spirit, and replaces truth with confusion. Before I turned to leave, I saw one child looking straight at me, genderless, empty-eyed, as if silently asking, "Why did you let me watch this?" I stepped back, heart sinking. I used to think danger was out there in the world, but I realized then the deepest trap had been inside my home all along, and I had been the one who pressed play. I used to believe music was harmless, just rhythm and melody, a way to help Naomi relax and express herself. I played songs for her as a child and watched her dance, thinking I was nurturing joy. People always said, music is the language of the soul. But here, in this place, I saw what I had ignored for far too long. The surroundings grew dark. No floor, no ceiling, just an endless void where sound floated like mist. Children stood scattered throughout, each one wearing headphones, swaying gently with closed eyes. The silence was eerie, but the lyrics flooding the air were worse. Lines filled with lust, defiance, despair, and vanity. Some even whispered, "Drink, die," or "Love is pain." I noticed one boy, about Naomi's age, mouthing the lyrics without emotion. His face looked distant, drained of life. Each word seemed to strip away another layer of his soul. The demon beside me didn't speak with mockery this time. He simply watched, then said coldly, "I don't need to talk to children. I just need them to sing my words every day." I froze. It suddenly made sense. Adults might dismiss it as poetry or trend, but to a young mind, repetition turns lyrics into inner truth. These weren't just songs. They were seeds, and when planted long enough, they became beliefs. I remembered all the times Naomi listened to music I didn't understand. I'd ask, "What you listening to?" She'd say, "Just TikTok songs," and I'd move on. I thought it was harmless, but now I saw those catchy beats had become the soundtrack of surrender. I turned and looked again. Every child was singing something different, yet they all looked the same, lifeless, their lips moving like puppets. I wanted to pull the headphones off, to scream for them to stop, but I couldn't. I was just a soul, watching the damage unfold. The demon approached a little girl, whispered a single lyric, and she smiled, not with joy, but with resignation. It was as if she had accepted defeat. And that's when I realized music wasn't making children rebellious, it was making them give up. The demon looked at me one last time and said, "This is what you fed them since they were small. Now they welcome me into their souls, without resistance." I couldn't respond. All I could hear were the lyrics Naomi once sang, lyrics I had ignored. Now they echoed like curses I couldn't take back. The final scene didn't look like hell at all. It was a bustling city, cars honking, lights flashing, people rushing by. There was no fire or darkness, yet the weight in my chest was heavier than ever before. Something about it felt more dangerous, because it looked so normal. I noticed a boy, maybe 8, playing on the sidewalk with a small toy car, but his eyes weren't on the toy. He was staring at a giant screen across the street, where another boy drove a sports car, posed in a mansion, wore luxury clothes, and smiled like life was perfect. The child clutched his toy tighter, not with joy, but silent envy. I looked at him and saw my own reflection. I had told Naomi, "Work hard so you can have a better life." I spoke of success, careers, houses, thinking I was protecting her. But now I realized I had taught her to chase shadows. The demon stepped out of the crowd, no longer hiding. He pointed at the boy, then the busy people around him, and said, "I don't need to destroy them. I just need to convince them that success is everything. Then they'll abandon God on their own." He didn't sound proud, just certain. I stood in silence, because deep down I knew he was right. For years I had told Naomi that faith was important, but secondary. I treated God like an add-on to a busy life, not the center of it. And she learned exactly what I showed her. The scene shifted. The little boy was now a young man. He wore a sleek suit, carried a briefcase, attended meetings, signed contracts. From the outside he looked like he had made it, but his eyes were empty, numb from pressure, from constant striving, from never feeling good enough. I trembled. I had thought I was giving Naomi direction, but if she gained the world and lost her soul, what had I truly given her? The demon's voice was sharper now, no longer taunting. "I don't need them to sin. I just need them to stay busy. Busy chasing, comparing, and climbing until they forget who they are." I cried out inside, "What am I supposed to do? Give it all up?" The demon didn't answer. He didn't have to. I already knew. It was never about rich or poor. It was about the throne of the heart, and I had let God be pushed aside in mine. Then I saw Naomi, not as she is now, but older, richer, and completely hollow. She sat alone in a beautiful house, staring out with lifeless eyes, a wine glass in hand. No prayer, no purpose, just success that left her soul starving. I broke down. I wanted to scream at my past self, "Don't lead her to the world, lead her to the Word." I thought the 7 traps were the end, but they were only the beginning. The demon didn't just want me to understand anymore, it wanted me to feel the full weight of what I had allowed. The space around us darkened, stripped of illusions, and I followed it with a dread too deep for words. We stopped in front of a heavy iron door, no lock, but it radiated sorrow. The demon pushed it open, revealing a cold, cracked room with faint red light, and there she was. Naomi, but not the child I remembered. She looked older, slumped in a corner, her eyes empty, clutching a dead phone in her hands. I rushed toward her, calling her name. She didn't move. I reached for her, but my hand passed through like smoke. She was breathing, but hollow. A soul still in the body, but lost in every way that mattered. I dropped beside her, whispering through tears, "Please, take me instead." The demon crouched beside me, no longer mocking. Its voice was heavy, final. "You think sacrifice undoes what's been done? I didn't trick her, I just filled the silence you left behind. You kept her safe from strangers, but gave her soul to a screen. And now, you see the result." I couldn't argue. I had nothing left. I didn't beg for life, I only begged for her to have the chance I failed to give. Then, everything changed. A silent light entered the room, not blinding, not warm, but undeniable. The atmosphere shifted, shadows fled, even the demon stood still. From the light came a figure, no words were needed, I knew it was the Lord. He didn't speak to me, he looked straight at the demon and said with quiet power, "You again." The demon trembled. "They chose me," it muttered. But the Lord replied firmly, "They chose nothing, they were deceived. I've come to reclaim what is mine." The demon didn't argue. It turned away, silent and defeated. Then the Lord stepped toward Naomi. He touched her shoulder. Light flowed from his hand into her body. Her hollow eyes blinked. Her gaze shifted. And then her lips moved. She looked at me. A flicker of life returned to her face, and she whispered just one word, "Mom?" I opened my eyes and found myself lying on the floor, my head pounding. Morning light streamed through the curtains. It was over. No more red room, no more demons. But the images of what I had just witnessed were still burning in my soul. Naomi was crouched beside me, sobbing, shaking my arm. "Mum, can you hear me?" I blinked. I closed my eyes again, and suddenly I was in a quiet place, surrounded by a soft white light. God was there. No introduction was needed. He looked at me and said, "I didn't show you all this to frighten you, but to help you see what's been slipping away. Naomi is not condemned, but she's on a path drifting from me, and you're the only one close enough to bring her back." I wept. "But I've failed her. I let the world raise her." God replied, "That's why you're still here, not just to survive, but to live rightly." Then I saw Naomi in a vision, older, stronger, holding a Bible, speaking boldly about God. "Is that real?" I asked. God said, "If you choose to walk with me from now on, that future can be hers." I nodded, heart full of tears. He placed his hand on my shoulder. "Go, love with truth, lead her in light, and never stay silent again." When I opened my eyes again, Naomi was still holding me. I placed my hand gently on her back and whispered, "I'm here, and I won't let you lose your way again." So that's the end of today's letter. If the mother in this story was willing to go to hell just to win back her daughter's soul, then the next woman chose to be consumed by fire from heaven just to have one more chance to return to her child. You think sacrifice is just about tears? Wait until you hear the next letter, where a bolt of lightning didn't just stop a heartbeat, it awakened a divine mission that goes far beyond life itself. Welcome back to Eternal Bible Stories, where we share real, near-death experiences, stories that have the power to change your life. But before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what really happens to the souls of those who have been cremated? Does the way we leave this world affect where we will go after we die? Today I bring you the testimony of a woman who died, but came back with vivid memories of hell and an unexpected encounter with Jesus himself. There, he revealed a shocking truth about the fate of cremated souls, something that may completely shake your understanding of life after death. If you believe that life doesn't end in ashes, stay with us until the end of this video. And please, let us know where you're watching from and which part of this story touched your heart the most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because today's story might save a soul, perhaps even yours. Now, here is her testimony. Hello, my name is Madeline Reeves. I'm 54 years old and I live in Boise, Idaho. I never imagined that one day I would be sharing this story in front of thousands of people. For nearly 2 years, I kept everything that happened on that fateful night to myself. Not because I was afraid of being judged, but because I needed time to process everything I had gone through. Before all of this, my life was fairly ordinary by most people's standards. I had a stable job, a modest little home, and the usual ups and downs of everyday life. I'm the mother of Nathan, my son, who has been in a wheelchair since he was 6 years old after a tragic swimming accident at Redfish Lake. I used to believe that love could overcome anything until I discovered that my husband, Derek, had betrayed not only our marriage, but also the closest friendship I had. The woman, she was my best friend, the one I trusted, the one I shared my joys and sorrows with. Worse yet, she was pregnant. The news spread quickly, and the pain I could barely bear suddenly became a public spectacle. I saw the pitying looks, heard the whispers as I passed by. My private grief, my suffering, it was all laid bare for the world to see and judge. Around the same time, my left arm started to ache constantly. It was a strange kind of pain, a mix of numbness and weakness. At times it felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on that one arm, but with everything going on, I barely had time to think about it. Besides, who would notice me anyway? People were too busy gossiping about the affair. In the middle of all this chaos, only my son remained my reason to keep going. He didn't know anything, and I wanted to keep it that way. Accepting that he'd be in a wheelchair for life was already a wound too deep for a child to carry. I couldn't let his tender little heart take on the pain of adult betrayal too. Then, after finding out that the baby my former best friend was carrying wasn't Derek's, he came back, begging for forgiveness, swearing he had changed, promising to rebuild our family. But when I looked at him, all I could see were the mistakes. How can you rebuild a home when the very foundation has rotted away? Every word, every touch from him only reopened the wound. The love we once had, once so beautiful, had now curdled into bitterness. A quiet kind of resentment that I couldn't voice, but also couldn't swallow. I felt like a stranger in my own life, trapped between a past I couldn't return to and a future I couldn't see. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know where to go, what to do, or even who I was anymore. My body was exhausted, and my soul felt like a wasteland after the storm. I didn't realize it then, but I was nearing a breaking point. Looking back now, I understand. When everything inside you has run dry, there comes a moment when the universe, or maybe it's God himself, starts to stir. And when that happens, you can never predict what's coming next. It all began so normally. I was simply searching for a bit of peace amid the wreckage and relentless pressure that had become my life. Some friends invited me to play poker, and I agreed. Not because I loved the game, but because I needed an excuse to escape. To just be Madeline. Not the betrayed wife, not the worried mother, just me. The laughter was genuine, the moments brief but precious. It felt like taking a breath of fresh air after being underwater for far too long. But as always, just when I started to feel the tiniest bit okay, reality came crashing back like a wave. Derek showed up. He always had a way of ruining the few peaceful moments I managed to find. He was drunk, reeking of alcohol, eyes bloodshot, slurring his words. He insisted I go home with him. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotion. Anger that he had invaded my space, fear of what might happen if I refused, and exhaustion from constantly having to hold myself together. For reasons I still can't fully explain, I agreed. Maybe I was too tired to resist. Maybe a tiny part of me still clung to the hope that things could be better. Or maybe I just wanted the conversation to end so I could get back to Nathan. In his drunken state, Derek demanded that I drive his new car, a car I'd never driven before. The thought of taking control of something unfamiliar made me uneasy, but once again I gave in. Sometimes agreeing feels easier than fighting. We got in the car, and the silence between us was suffocating, filled with unspoken words and wounds that never healed. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, eyes fixed on the road ahead, fully aware of his gaze on me. Then he broke the silence. He started talking about our marriage, the past, and how he wanted everything to go back to the way it was. His words were a chaotic mix of regret and blame, apologizing one minute, accusing me the next for not being able to move on. Without warning, Derek reached for my hand, not with affection, but with a dangerous kind of resolve. He grabbed my finger, trying to pull off my wedding ring, the one he had given me years ago, once a symbol of love, now just a relic of a broken dream. I yanked my hand away instinctively, not because I still loved him, but because that ring held the last shred of the woman I used to be, the one who believed in love and loyalty. That was the moment everything shattered. Derek's expression changed, his face twisted with anger, disappointment, and something darker. Before I could process what was happening, he lunged at me. In a matter of seconds, my life was about to change forever. One moment I was driving, trying to keep things together. The next, he was on top of me, pinning me against the driver's seat. His hands held me down with a strength I didn't know he possessed. The stench of alcohol filled my lungs, and the eyes that once looked at me with love were now filled with a fury that chilled me to the bone. I tried to scream, but his arm crushed my throat. I couldn't breathe. My lungs burned, desperate for air. My hands, once gripping the wheel, now clawed at his skin, trying to push him away. But it was no use. He was too strong, and the alcohol seemed to make him even stronger. My vision blurred, black dots danced before my eyes. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, a deafening countdown to the final seconds I had left. That feeling, when your own body betrays you, begging to live but no longer able to fight, is something I'll never forget. In that moment, a flood of thoughts raced through my mind. I thought of Nathan, my precious boy. If I didn't survive, who would take care of him? How would he cope with losing me in a life already filled with too many challenges? I thought of my parents, my friends, of all the things I hadn't done yet, all the dreams left unrealized. And then, just as I felt myself slipping away, just when my body was ready to give up, a strange thing happened. It was as if a veil had been lifted. The pain, the fear, everything vanished. I felt weightless, like I no longer belonged to my body. I began to drift. At first I thought I had simply passed out, but then I realized I could see everything, and with a clarity I had never experienced before. I saw Derek still pinning my body against the driver's seat. I saw my own face, pale, motionless, void of life. But I wasn't there anymore. I was outside of myself, hovering above, watching everything unfold like a scene from a movie I could no longer control. I saw the moment Derek realized what he had done. I saw the panic flood his eyes as he let go of my neck, shaking me, calling out my name. But I couldn't answer. My body was still there, but I was somewhere else. That's when I understood. This wasn't unconsciousness. I had died. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. Instead, I felt a peace so profound, so deep, I almost didn't recognize it. And just when I thought I had seen the most extraordinary thing, something even more miraculous began to happen. A radiant light appeared, more beautiful than anything I had ever seen. It wasn't just bright, it was warm, welcoming, and overflowing with a love I never knew existed. I knew, with an unshakable certainty I can't explain, that my journey was only just beginning. Wrapped in that indescribable light, I felt myself being lifted away from the car, away from Derek, away from the lifeless shell of my body. I wasn't yanked or dragged. I was guided, gently, lovingly, with such care. I was floating, yet completely held. There was no fear, no pain, only a deep, holy stillness and a sense of being welcomed home. As I drifted further from the scene of the attack, I became aware that my perception was expanding. No longer bound by physical senses, I could feel, hear, and understand everything at once. Colors were more vivid, sounds more pure, and even energy itself had a presence I could sense. Suddenly, I found myself in a place that words cannot truly describe. It felt like I was everywhere and nowhere, all at once. Time didn't exist the way we understand it. Past, present, and future melted into a single, unified reality. In that state, I began to understand things I had never been able to grasp before. It was as if all the knowledge of the universe was accessible to me. I understood the purpose of life, the meaning of love, the sacred connection between all living things. I saw that every decision, every action, no matter how small, sends ripples through the great tapestry of existence. And there I was, Madeline Reeves, standing at the threshold of another world, a world where truth is no longer hidden and unconditional love is the very breath of existence. I saw my entire life unfold before me. Not as a linear timeline, but as a vast mosaic, where every moment, every relationship, every trial was woven together with divine precision. I saw all the experiences that shaped me, the opportunities I missed, the lessons I learned. But there was no shame, no regret, only deep understanding and acceptance. And then, right in the center of that experience, I felt a presence. Not just an energy or a light, but a person. Radiant, majestic, overflowing with a love so powerful it wrapped around my soul like a warm embrace. He walked toward me, and though he didn't speak aloud, I knew instantly it was Jesus. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw eternity. He didn't need to introduce himself. My soul recognized him. Jesus began to walk with me through the memories of my life. We didn't speak with words, but through thoughts, emotions, and pure understanding. I asked questions about the meaning of life, the reason for suffering, what happens after death. He didn't answer with explanations, but with revelations. Truth didn't come as information, it came as remembrance, as if I had always known, but was only now able to grasp it. I understood that life on earth is a sacred classroom. Every challenge, every pain is an opportunity to grow. That love is the most powerful force in the universe, stronger even than death, and that we are all connected. Each action, no matter how small, ripples across the fabric of eternity. Then I thought of Derek and what he had done, but instead of anger or bitterness, I felt compassion. I saw his wounds, his fear, the pain and confusion that drove his actions. It didn't excuse what he did, but I could now see beyond it, to the broken soul behind the broken behavior. And then I thought of Nathan, my son, my heart. A flood of unconditional love surged through me. I saw that his life, though filled with hardship, carried a divine purpose. He was destined to impact many, to teach others through his resilience, his strength, and his quiet courage. Jesus turned to me again. His gaze was both tender and commanding, and suddenly a vision opened before me, vivid and alive. I saw Nathan, no longer in a wheelchair but standing, walking, strong, confident. He looked older, in his 20s maybe, and beside him stood a young woman. They held hands, their eyes full of deep mutual love. She was his wife. My heart swelled with joy. The scene shifted. I saw them in a warm, welcoming home. Nathan was playing with two small children, my grandchildren, laughing, lifting them into the air. The sound of their laughter was pure light. Then I saw him at work, focused and driven, surrounded by books and papers. He had become a respected professional, someone making a difference in people's lives. The vision continued. I saw him speaking to large crowds, sharing his story and inspiring others. I saw him being honored, receiving awards for his contributions to the world. I saw him grow old, surrounded by family and friends, full of peace and purpose. In every scene, Nathan radiated strength, joy, and quiet determination. This was the future I had once dreamed of for him, but never dared believe was possible. As I watched these moments unfold, I understood the reason for this vision. It was a calling, a divine reminder. Nathan needed me, not just now while he was still young, but throughout his journey into that bright future. I had a role to play in his transformation, from a boy in a wheelchair to the man I had just seen. And in that moment, I felt it with absolute certainty. I had to go back. No matter how painful, no matter how hard, it was time to return. Nathan would need me to believe in him, to fight for him, to never let him give up. The vision slowly faded, but the feeling it left in me remained, a fire of purpose, of hope, of unconditional love. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be trials, doubts, and dark nights. But now I had clarity. I had seen the reason to keep going. As the final image of Nathan disappeared, I felt ready. Ready to return, ready to be the mother he needed, ready to help him live the future that God had just shown me. But before I could return, before reuniting with my body, I had one final journey to take, a journey to a place I never imagined existed, a place that forever altered my understanding of life, death, and what comes after. Just when I thought my experience couldn't become any more intense, I felt a sudden shift. The radiant light that had embraced me began to fade, replaced by a thick, suffocating darkness. It was as if I was being pulled down into a realm that challenged everything I thought I knew about existence. And then I was there, in a place that could only be described as hell. This was not the hell of movies or storybooks, no red devils, no pitchforks. What I encountered was far more vivid, far more terrifying. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and hopelessness. It wavered between freezing cold and unbearable heat, distorting time and sense. Every movement of my consciousness felt like stepping into living agony. All around me were souls, no longer physical bodies but ghostly forms, writhing, twisting in torment. Some seemed to be burning, yet not consumed, trapped in a fire that didn't kill, only tortured. Others floated in total darkness, cut off from sound, touch, or even awareness of others. Complete isolation. I saw souls reliving the worst moments of their lives, over and over, trapped in a loop of guilt and regret with no way out. The soundscape was horrifying, a cacophony of shrieking, weeping, cries for mercy. But it wasn't just noise. It was the echo of broken hearts that had never healed. As I tried to grasp what I was seeing, something deeply disturbing struck me. Some of the souls here had clearly been cremated after death. I turned toward the faint presence of light still lingering near me. Jesus, who had walked with me through heaven, now dimmed by the weight of this place. Are they here because they were cremated? I asked, shaken and confused. The answer came not in words, but as a wave of undeniable truth. No. Cremation is not a sin. They are here not because of what happened to their bodies, but because of what they chose in life. That truth hit me like a stone in still water. I realized then this was not punishment from a cruel God. This was the natural consequence of a soul's choices. A reflection of the heart, not a verdict from heaven. Each person in their own way had created this hell through what they did, what they thought, what they refused to change. Some were here because of cruelty, others because of greed, pride, or cold indifference to others' pain. But what broke me most were the souls trapped here because they couldn't forgive themselves. They had built their own prison with shame and guilt, locking themselves away in torment of their own making. My heart ached with compassion. I saw that many of them didn't even know they could leave. They were so entangled in self-condemnation they couldn't even recognize that a way out existed. And then I thought of Derek. His violent act had brought me to the edge of death. There was a time I thought I would hate him forever. But now, standing in the presence of ultimate truth, I felt something entirely different. A deep, sorrowful grief. If Derek never changed, if he refused to repent, if he continued on the path of pain and blindness, I knew this could be his fate, and I wouldn't wish this place on anyone, not even him. That experience taught me a lesson more powerful than anything I've ever known. Every word we speak, every choice we make, every thought we nurture, it all has consequences. They either lift us up or drag us down, not by God's hand but by the weight of our own souls. When I was finally pulled from that dreadful realm, it felt like being lifted out of the deepest pit imaginable. But I didn't come out of it afraid. I came out with a renewed fire, a purpose I had never known before. I knew now that I wasn't returning just for Nathan, not only to help my son fulfill the beautiful destiny I had seen, but to live in a way that would awaken others, to become a living reminder that light always exists, even in the darkest places, and that no matter what we've done, we can choose again, to love, to forgive, to repent, and to step out of the hells we've built for ourselves. With new clarity and purpose, I knew it was time to return to life, to my body, and to all the challenges ahead. After enduring the depths of hell, I felt a soft but insistent pull, like a thread guiding me home. The return was violent. My spirit, once limitless, was forced back into the cramped confines of flesh and pain. I gasped for air as my body screamed awake, each heartbeat a thunderclap, each breath a struggle. The spiritual truths I had grasped faded quickly, slipping away like mist. I was alive again, but it felt like being trapped in a cage. When I opened my eyes, everything looked dimmer. The world I'd returned to was distorted, like a faded echo of where I had been. Derek was there, hovering over me, panic etched on his face. He held me, called my name, but his touch repulsed me. He was no longer the man I once loved. He had become the reason I crossed into death. My voice was barely a whisper, but I managed, "Let me go." He didn't. Whether from denial or guilt, he kept touching me, trying to make it right. But it felt like another violation. Summoning strength I didn't know I had, I pushed him away. Pain surged through my body, but I didn't care. I stumbled out of the car, barefoot on cold ground, breathing in night air like it was my first breath. Everything felt surreal. Distant barks, wet grass, flickering lights, all so familiar and yet foreign. Derek followed me, pleading, apologizing. "Please, Madeline, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." I turned to face him. He looked small now, broken, pitiful. For a moment I felt pity. I remembered the souls in hell, stuck there not by force, but by self-condemnation. But then came the memory of his hands around my neck, the terror, the moment I slipped away. "Don't come near me," I said, voice steady. "It's over." He begged again, promising change, but something inside me had shifted, no longer out of fear, but power. "You didn't almost kill me, Derek. You did. I died in that car." He couldn't understand. How could he grasp what I'd seen? The divine light, the depths of darkness, the voice that called me back. "You don't get it," I continued. "I've seen what comes after this. I've learned what love is. And this," I gestured between us, "was never it." I spoke the truth I had hidden for years, about the betrayal, the loneliness, the weight of holding a marriage together that had long since fallen apart. Then I spoke about Nathan, our son, my reason to live. I told Derek about the vision, Nathan walking again, living fully, loved and free. "He's going to do incredible things, Derek, and I need to be here to see it, to help him get there." Something awakened inside me, not rage but conviction. I wasn't the broken woman anymore. I had crossed the veil, seen eternity, and returned with a mission. "It's over," I said once more, calm and certain. "Don't contact us again. If you want to change, do it far away from me and Nathan." And then I walked away from the man who had once meant everything to me. I heard the faint clink of a wedding ring hitting the pavement behind me, but I didn't turn around. That chapter was over. My body ached with each step, but my mind was clear and my heart light. I had died that night, but I had also been. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of pain and emotion. Physically, I was slow to heal. My throat remained sore, the bruises lingered, but the deeper wounds were invisible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the attack, felt the suffocation and fear all over again. I sought therapy because I knew I couldn't survive it alone. It was hard, revisiting that night, speaking the unspeakable, but it helped. And it wasn't just the trauma of the attack I was unpacking. It was the spiritual journey I had experienced beyond the brink of death. That part was hardest to share. How do you explain leaving your body, seeing eternal light, and then descending into a place of darkness? I feared people would think I imagined it. But my therapist listened with compassion. She helped me see that this experience didn't have to be hidden. It could become part of who I was becoming. I also had to navigate my feelings toward Elias, conflicting emotions of betrayal and sorrow, tempered by the strange compassion I had felt during my near-death experience. Forgiveness became a quiet, difficult road. Through it all, Nathan was my anchor. He was scared and confused, unsure why we were suddenly living at my aunt's or why his father wasn't there. I explained what I could in ways he'd understand. Watching him adapt reminded me of the vision I'd had of his future, a healthy, happy young man filled with light. That vision became my motivation when everything felt too heavy to bear. We started fresh. A modest apartment, a new routine. Morning coffee, walks to school, shared meals. I returned to work, facing awkward questions and sympathetic stares, but I pressed on. Having been so close to death, I found a new appreciation for life's smallest blessings. Nathan's laughter, sunlight through the window, the smell of breakfast cooking. These things became sacred. Meditation helped me stay grounded. I wasn't searching for escape. I was reaching for the divine peace I had once touched. Some days it felt out of reach, but with time I began to sense that quiet presence again. I didn't return to traditional religion, but I didn't just heal, I transformed. I became stronger, more resilient, more compassionate. I no longer feared death because I had seen what lay beyond it. Life was a gift I'd been given again, and I vowed not to waste it. There would still be challenges, but I was no longer afraid. I had walked through the fire and come back. Eventually, I began sharing my story in small support circles, then in larger gatherings, not for attention, but because I knew someone out there might be waiting for a sign that healing was possible. I wasn't a spiritual teacher. I was simply someone who had been broken, who had returned, and who now walked forward with open hands and an open heart. Nathan remained my guiding star. I encouraged him to believe in his strength even when his body resisted. When doctors suggested a new therapy to improve his mobility, he said yes without hesitation. It was a long, painful journey, but we held on. And the day Nathan took his first steps without help, I wept. Not because it was magic, but because it was earned. Faith, perseverance, and love had brought us there. I never went back to Elias, but I did forgive him. Not for his sake, but for mine. Years later, when Nathan wanted to reconnect with his father, I let him. He needed to walk his own path to forgiveness, just as I had. Their reunion brought closure and healing, not just to them, but to me. Now I live simply, intentionally. I wake each day with gratitude. I see every soul I meet as a chance to reflect love. I don't pretend life is without darkness, but I've learned how to carry light into it, and that, to me, is the truest miracle of all. The story may have ended, but what Madeline experienced still whispers to us that this world is not all there is. Heaven is real, hell is real, and every choice we make, no matter how small, carries eternal weight for our souls. If you're hearing this right now, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe God is knocking on your heart. Don't ignore it. Type Amen in the comments, or let us know where you're watching from. It's not about formality, it's about saying, I've heard this and I won't turn away. If Madeline's story touched you, share it. Someone you love might be desperate for hope. Someone may be standing on the edge, and you could be the one God is using to bring them back to the light. And if you, or someone you know, has had a supernatural experience, seen the light, met the Lord, or crossed the line between life and death, we want to hear from you. We're here to listen, to pray, and to walk this journey with you. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. These testimonies are real, and they carry the power to plant seeds that can save lives.